Welcome to the Path Podcast, where we will travel the lives of some bold women, from dreams to detours to destiny. She did not choose this path chose her. This is the Path Podcast. Welcome everyone to the Path Podcast. Our journey today takes us on the path of uncertainties and the agony of waiting in hope of getting pregnant, to the pain of loss, to hope and prayers of carrying a child to full term. When we as women make up in our minds it's time to start a family, it can start to consume our every thought in a way that is hard to explain to others who has never experienced this feeling. Oh, and the last thing any woman wants to hear, why can't you get pregnant? Or whose fault is it? Or these kids get on my nerves, so maybe it's best you don't have any. But what do you do when the realization of having a child didn't go the typical route and doesn't always follow effortlessly after love and marriage? The journey for some women takes a different path. I am so excited to welcome this sister to guide us through this journey she and her husband traveled. She is one of my confidants and my cousin. She is Legena. I am Pastor G. Crawford. We will explain Pastor G to all in a few. Right now, I'm going to jump into who she is. Legena Saxby Crawford, a native of Savannah, Georgia, has spent most of her years in the metro Atlanta area because of being a PK, preacher's kid, to the late Reverend Oliver Saxby Jr. and Miss Elise Orr Saxby. She is a proud academic product of the Atlanta public school system, for which she returned as an elementary school teacher now for over 25 years. Additionally, her academic studies included graduation from the State University of West Georgia, where she attained a bachelor's and master's degree in early childhood education. While at West Georgia, she became a member of Delta Sigma Theta Sorority Incorporated, Psi Soror. She is currently a doctoral candidate in the field of organizational leadership. Legena has over 35 years of experience and service in ministry and is currently the pastor of PowerPoint Christian Ministries in Stone Mountain, Georgia, the CEO of the Power Experience, or it's an organizational consulting firm, and LSC, which stands for Legena Saxby Crawford Ministries. She credits the favor of God for her first published book entitled Face Value. I can't wait to talk to her about that. And she's also well known for being a wordsmith. We'll get into all of those things later. And also, I would love to go into her family, but that's what we're going to be talking about today. So you will hear more about them as we go more into this interview. Right now, help me welcome my star, my cousin, my confidant, and someone who I look up to because of her walk, Miss Legena. I am Pastor G. Crawford. Welcome, Pastor G.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be a part of the path.
And let me tell everyone, I was going to have her tell me a little bit about herself, but because this woman is so humbled and so, she's that person who doesn't like talking about herself, she would not do it. So I had to do it for her. She would have just gone, started this interview so she can help other people. She will take all eyes off of her if she could, but right now all eyes are on her. And I'm so honored to have you here. So thank you
I'm
again.
honored to be here.
Thank you. So let's jump right into a lot. Tell me first about this being a preacher's kid before we move into our topic. How was that?
Being a preacher's kid was very interesting to say the least. I'm an only child. So, it was a lot of time with my dad spending away from the family. Oftentimes it was, having to go to church a couple of times a week, which I, in hindsight, did not mind because it made me who I am today. So, it was very interesting. Of course, people have this thing about sometimes preachers' kids are the worst kids. So it was always all eyes on me. It was, what is she doing now? You can't go here. You can't do that because your dad's a preacher. So it was very interesting, but I would not trade it for the world, would not trade the experience for the world.
I can't imagine that being the case because I was one who heard that the preacher kids were the worst, or we watched them in church. And sometimes we were laughing. It's like they were the ones that were all over the place, it seems, when it comes to some of the kids. So, but since I know this person, well, she turned out okay. She turned out okay. While growing up, was it your dream to follow in your dad's footsteps? Since we know the term Pastor G, which we're getting to still, was it your dream to follow that path, or tell me what was your dreams in the beginning?
That was not my dream, not even close to my dream. So my dream was I'm, supposed to be this award-winning, Oscar-nominated actress and this Grammy award-winning singer. So that was my dream, in addition to being a teacher. So I was going to be a teacher first. And then after I finished with that, I was going to go off and sing and act. And so, yeah, that whole pastor thing, that whole preacher thing was not a part of the dream.
Wow.
I'm grateful for it, however, don't think I'm not God. But that was that I never saw it coming.
Yes. So let me ask you this. Were you singing then, since you wanted to be a singer? You were always singing, of course, in the church then, I'm sure.
Yeah, I've always sang. My father was a musician. He was in a band, and my mom sang in a choir. My dad was. I come from a family that's very musically talented and gifted. So it was almost inevitable, that the singing came, the gift of music came. It's always music in the house in terms of my dad. So, and he listened to, King, and he loved gospel music. So all of that was a part of me growing up. So singing just became my outlet,
Mhm.
but more so singing to myself. Singing to myself. I didn't like for people to hear me sing. It wasn't until after I graduated from college till I actually started being more open with singing. And it kind of shocked everybody because they didn't know that I could actually sing.
Really?
Yeah.
But that's people you mean in the church, not your mother and father.
Yeah. People in the church, they were very shocked. So, it was kind of like you're in the choir and you hear this voice. And my godbrother has this story where he tells, where he's like, okay, who is that? And then he turns around and it's me. And he's like, oh my gosh, I never knew. So, it became a part of who I am and my outlet.
Did you pursue some of the acting and singing outside of the church?
I did a little bit of, theater in high school. It wasn't a whole lot. Did some, I actually had within this group that a friend and I, we formulated, and was called Leather and Lace.
Not leather
But
and
then we
lace.
changed, yeah, yeah,
Did
yeah,
the
leather and
what
lace.
did
So
past what did Reverend Saxby? Did they know the name of your group at the time?
well, we had to change the name.
Okay, of course.
So the name changed from Leather and Lace to Influence. And we did a demo, and it was like, okay, yeah, we're ready to go. So my partner in the group, she was like, yes, let's do this. Let's go ahead and get this done. And then it was, I chickened out. I backed out. It was no, I'm just gonna go ahead and go to school and go to college. And so it was that kind of thing. It was that kind of conversation where my nerves took over and the anxiety of it took over. I was like, nah. So the dream was almost a reality, was on the road to being a reality, but fear. So I was like, oh, no, yeah, it was cool. I mean, even the person who did the recording and the producing, he was like, hey, you really have a voice here. Let's go ahead and go with this. I backed out. No, I gotta go to school.
So you didn't think you could do school and try to pursue that at the time, but you saying it was the fear more than that you made an excuse with school because you were going to go to school. We know that from the family you came from,
Yeah,
but you think it was the fear more that pulled you out of it than just school alone.
it was the fear. It was the fear. It was one thing to dream about it, but it was another thing to actually see it possibly come into fruition. So, and of course, that's how sometimes the path is, where, you have these big dreams, but when they're actually put in front of you, you don't know what to do with it. So, sometimes it causes you to kind of back out. And that's what happened. Again, looking at it now, I'm glad I had the opportunity. And I don't know where it would have taken me, but I still think that being being a part of my path still brought me to this point. So I'm appreciative of the experience,
Yeah.
but
Now
it's
you
I
are,
still get
of
to
course.
see this in a different way.
Of
Yeah,
course.
now I am. Yeah.
Wow, I'm still stuck on leather and lace for Pastor G, y'all. Leather and lace.
And
But we
we
can
were
move on.
pretty good. We were pretty good.
Yeah, we can stay there for a minute, but we're gonna move on because I would love to hear so much more about that. But I know we have even more serious things that we want to talk about. So, working in ministry, let's move some years forward. Working in ministry,
Hmm.
I know you're currently married. Is that where you met your husband?
Hmm. Yes. So I met my husband at church.
Mm.
We were both part of the same denomination. We would see and it's interesting because I used to direct the choir,
Okay.
and we had an afternoon engagement one Sunday, and so he popped up in the choir, and I'm like, "Who are you? You were not at choir rehearsal. You were not at church. Where did you come from?" And so, we were introduced, but we were friends
Yeah.
years before,
Mhm.
that even transpired. So that's a whole nother interesting story right there.
Exactly.
But yeah, I met him at church.
But he popped up in, I love the
He popped
part
up.
he popped up in there, didn't go to practice or anything. It was meant to be, obviously. It was meant to be.
It was yeah. A friend of mine invited him to sing with us that afternoon, and so I credit her for having invited him,
Exactly.
and
And
and he sings as well. So
yes.
it just kind of happened, just kind of worked.
Oh, great, great. Well, yes, I've heard him, and that is so true when it comes to him. So let's start. Okay, what year did you all get married, if you mind me asking?
We got married in 2002 on his 26th birthday.
Oh, wow, on his birthday. Now that's a
On his
special day
birthday.
for him because
Yeah,
birth and the birth of a marriage, of a new life.
yeah.
That's a big deal for
And
him.
it helps me to remember the date.
It
Hmm.
works good in all ways, right?
Yeah, it works all the way around.
Okay, so you get married 2002, life going according to what we consider plan, being young
Hmm.
people because we think we have it figured out, right? So
Yeah.
so things going well. Did you ever sit back and wonder like, oh, did the two of you ever discuss family, starting a family or
We did a little bit. I wanted 4 kids.
okay.
I wanted 4 kids. So, it's that whole thing of you're married by 25, you have your first kid at 27, and your second kid at 29, and it just did not happen that
Our
way.
plan.
But
That's
yeah, I
our plan.
wanted 4 kids. Yeah, our plan.
Yeah.
So I wanted 4 kids. And we talked about it. I think we kind of settled on maybe 3.
Okay.
So, it was that agreement of, okay, yeah, hey, let's go ahead and get this done, and let's get started. And it just did not happen that way.
But were y'all considering, like, after you got married in 2002, did you want to start right away, or you decided to wait? Some years when some people say, let's wait a little bit, or if it just happened when it happened in God's timing.
We decided to wait, but even in the waiting, when we decided it was time, it did not happen like we thought it would have. So that was a kind of a disappointing time in the marriage, because it was like, wait a minute, this is according to what we have seen in the lives of other people, according to the so-called vision of life. It's like, no, you're just supposed to be able to it happened. It's supposed to just happen automatically. So to have that not happen at the time that we decided, yeah, it's time, it was kind of disappointing.
Yeah.
It was greatly disappointing.
And just like I mentioned earlier, they say, we think it's effortlessly right after
Yeah.
love, the marriage. Okay,
Yeah.
boom.
On the
When
baby
I'm ready,
carriage.
let's have
Yeah.
the baby my time. It's my time. And
Yeah.
it's not
Yeah.
anything else. It's just what we think. And that's with everything. Again, I think I'll be saying this in every podcast. It's like, okay, if we want to make God laugh, let's tell him our plan or our
Our
dreams,
plan. Yeah.
because it does not always work out that way. So
It does not.
like you said, you want it for kids. Were you that little girl when you were growing up thinking of all of that at any point as you can remember? I mean, I never really thought about it. I played with dolls sometimes, but it was not so big on, oh, I'm gonna get married, have children. It was not big in my mind, but when that time came, it became important to me. But were you that little girl that had that dream of a family always, or just never thought about it?
I was not that little girl.
Yeah.
It looked like pregnancy hurt. So, and as you got older, it's just like seeing it and hearing about it, it was like, okay, I want them,
Yeah,
but I don't know if I necessarily want them like that.
exactly.
That looks like it
Yeah.
hurts. So, even though, so I wasn't that little girl with the, even though I had dolls, but it wasn't the, I'm dressed up and,
Uh-huh.
pretending I was married and that kind of thing. I mean, over the course of time,
Yeah,
you kind of think about with different boyfriends and that kind of thing, what would it be like?
of course.
Or, the whole, I'm going to name my kids this, I'm going to name my kids that. But it wasn't like, that was all I thought about, where some people, it's like, well, I've always known I was going to have this and I dreamed about it. I wasn't that kid, but, I wasn't against having kids,
Yeah.
but it was, I think because I grew up as an only child, I knew I wanted a big
You
family.
wanted more than one, of course.
I wanted more than one.
Of
Yeah.
course. I understand that. I had a friend who once, when they were always on me, some coworkers in the past, and they would ask me, Arlene, when are you going to have babies? When are you going to have babies? At that time, she had already had three, and we were only like 25, I think it was 25, 26.
Mm.
And she was telling me, she said when she first decided to have kids, when she was like 21, that's all she knew she wanted to do was have children. She said, I just want
Wow.
children. I told her at 21, I could not imagine having a
No.
child. If for me, because I felt like I just couldn't imagine it, because it was huge to me. Like you said, I believe it hurts.
Yeah.
You have to, it's a baby, it's a person inside of you. It was just a big
Oh,
deal.
yeah.
And my dad, I think, kind of threatened me. And my sister
Oh,
was
yeah.
growing up. So, by that time I was married, but still, I still was like, nah, not right now. Not right now for me.
Yeah. Yeah.
So let me ask you this. As time goes on, and I know that you two of you looked at each other at some point, and when you really got to that point where you're like, it's time. Do you kind of remember
Hmm.
when you were really, you and your husband was really at a point where you're like, it's time. It's really time now.
I think it hit me more so after, or at the beginning of my 30s.
Mm-hmm.
You start hearing about that biological clock, and
Yeah.
you start hearing about, when you're going to have kids and this kind of thing. And um, both of our parents being older.
Mhm.
So it was kind of like a, hey, well, I guess we need to go ahead and try to, get this started and
Yeah.
figure out, well, what's going on. So, it was that. And I think it was, succumbing to the pressure of other people to say, look at your age, you don't want to wait too long, you want to be able to enjoy them while you can, and that kind of thing. So it was that talk that was the pressure of going into to try to conceive. And it was more so, looking back at it, it was me kind of pushing him a little bit,
Yes.
to say, hey, because he's younger than I am.
Okay.
So, it was pushing him to say, okay, hey, not necessarily thinking about him in terms of, well, how does he really feel about this? But for me, it's like, look, I'm getting a little bit older, and this
Years
is
of
what
me.
I'm hearing about what happens. So we need to go ahead and get this thing started. And if it's not starting, we need to figure out why. So
I
that's
know.
what we were.
I know. And you know what? I want to touch back on, like you said, where people, saying, or in our mind, we're thinking, okay, I'm at 30 because I had my daughter at 30.
Mhm.
Or people coming to you saying, especially some of our more mature people than we, that like, okay,
Yes,
you're
our
not getting any
seasoned, our
younger.
seasoned,
Yes. And
seasoned
so
saints.
it
Hmm.
made me be more conscious to say, I don't want to put that pressure on my daughter or my nieces and my nephews and other people, because I think that is unfair, you know, and I know people do it in love, but it's so much pressure on a person, and especially in a pressure on a person when things don't go according to plan, or if it's not
Right.
easy. So that gets to add magnitude the amount of pressure that it is when people are asking you those questions. So okay, around 30, you were starting to be more interested in having kids and talking to your husband. Um, and life starts to move on. You got that bug now. You seeing your friends, I'm sure, having babies, and
Oh yeah.
all of that's going on. Let's move into like 7 years later, 2009. You find out the first time. Is that what happened in 2009 that was a big deal in your lives?
2009. I started feeling a little, weird,
Hmm.
and went to the doctor, and the doctor was like, you're pregnant. I'm what? So, at this point it was like, okay, clearly this is probably not going to happen. So we even entertained the thought of adopting. So,
So you,
looking at it
excuse me
from,
if you don't mind me interrupting 1 second. So you,
no, go ahead.
I guess you all were at some point where you were trying a year or two or some years before, so you didn't get pregnant. So you were already in 2009 thinking, this is not happening faster than you
Yeah.
thought it would have. You thought you probably, so if I'm correct, you're thinking you would have been pregnant sooner than when we're going into 2009.
Oh yeah,
Okay.
definitely. So, we kind of made up our minds. It was like, okay, well, if it doesn't happen, all right, let's go ahead and consider
Yeah.
adopting. Considering it, even looking at it, looking into it, but still having that desire to say, but honestly, I really want to have my own. Being honest, I really want to
Woman,
have
I
my own.
think, feels that way.
Nothing against adoption or anything like that, but it's like, I wanted to have my own. So, um, found out, that I was expecting, and really was kind of in shock. Like, wait a minute, whoa, what? I'm 37.
After all
What do
that
you
time,
mean?
you still was
After
shocked.
all that
Yes.
time?
Uh-huh.
So it was like after all that time, but still being excited, being nervous,
Hmm.
as all get out, it was like, oh my gosh, this is really about to happen.
Yes.
So, he's nervous, I'm nervous, but still excited. Our moms are excited, family is excited. So it's still that whole thing of, okay, yeah, we're about to do this.
Hmm.
Yeah. So we were excited, shocked, but still, even though we were still expecting it,
Yeah.
still shocked when it
Still
happened, still
shocked.
shocked when we got the news. Yeah.
I
So,
think
but
that can happen to a lot of us. It's just a little like, whoo, there's someone growing inside of me.
yeah,
Shock of
yeah,
it
it was
all.
exciting.
Yes. And especially I think like you're moving about your day and your life and
Hmm.
just moving, thankfully, and not wasn't just so focused on that. Like some people are, respectfully, they are, and I
Right.
understand. But you just was moving about. And then to hear that, it has to be kind of like startling in some ways still, even though you were
And
kind
let me back up. I just something just came to my mind. Over the course of the years, we started buying little things. It's the whole thing where it's like, you gotta see it and go ahead and start buying clothes and go ahead and start buying little things.
of.
So we started that. So
Mhm.
every vacation we took, on our way back or at some point during the vacation, we would buy something, whether it was a bib, a baby bottle, something for the baby.
Yes. Oh, wow. So so
And
those
then when
things
those
were in
things
the
started
house.
accumulating, yeah. So we had this little box and we would put it away, and they started accumulating. So we're looking at, okay, we're starting to accumulate all this baby stuff, but
The baby,
we don't have a baby to use it.
exactly. You were just you're getting prepared for the arrival, and it's like,
Yeah.
hey, we have to really give this to somebody to use.
Right. Right. Yeah.
So it was, of course, gender neutral. You just look not sure. You're just doing stuff because not looking for a girl or a boy in particular, just baby stuff, just that can go either way. Were you always wanting one over the other first? Your first choice of, how because we all got that in our head. I love for the boy to be
We
my
do.
first or the girl to be my first. Did y'all have that idea when you were buying any particular gender?
So for me, I wanted a girl.
Mm.
I wanted a girl, just knew I was gonna have a girl. And for him, it didn't matter. He was like, as long as baby's healthy,
Yes.
I'm good. So, even thinking back where my mom purchased this outfit for a girl,
Mhm.
and it was so adorable.
Oh,
So, she caught on, and it was that whole, I'm just kind of holding on to it. I'm just kind of saving it. So, it was the excitement of it. So now it's like, oh, okay. So we might actually get the opportunity
okay.
to see a kid wearing this. And, so now, it's about to happen now. Okay, God, you had us waiting for a reason. Oh, yes,
See?
it's about to go down. So the excitement was there. The
Of course.
excitement was there. I mean, even you know, people at church, or everybody was excited.
Exactly. So, okay, so 2009, of course, you received the blessed news that you and your husband you're expecting. Um,
Mhm.
both grandmothers are about to get their first
Mhm.
grandbaby,
Mhm.
because it was first on both sides,
First on both
both
sides.
sides.
Yeah.
So tell me, of course, you've already alluded to how you're shocked and but still excited, of course. But
Yeah.
I'm sure you're going about your days as normal. Did you have any concerns besides that of being a first time mother?
There was always concern, I think, because of my age.
Okay.
There was always concern. Of course, you hear things. You hear this might happen. You hear that might happen. So, of course, in the back of your mind, you're thinking, okay, I'm excited, but still proceeding with caution.
Of course.
So, it was that part where and was trying to make sure that I didn't overdo something, or of course this is your first pregnancy, so it's like, oh my goodness, okay, what is this like? So you're trying to read up on everything.
Hmm.
You're trying to make sure you did this right, or you're trying to you have people giving you advice about this and how to do this, and take this. And so it's kind of like that whole thing of, I don't want to say it was overly stressful,
Yeah,
but it was to the point where sometimes I had to sit and breathe and go, okay, just chill out.
of course.
Just chill out.
Hmm.
You about to kind of overdo it here. So just kind of calm down. But we were both nervous. I mean, it was both like, oh, you pray for it and you're waiting on it. And then when it happens, it's like, oh, it
Oh,
happened for real, for real. Oh, okay, God. Okay. So you did here. Okay. Okay then. All right. So now you've been praying for the blessing. The blessing is coming,
yes,
and you're sitting there like, but what I'm supposed to do?
do.
So so it was that.
Yes, of course. That's understandable because I felt the same way. It's just like, okay, when you first get pregnant, I wasn't so much concentrating on the age. Mine was more of,
Hmm.
like it's again, I said earlier, it's someone growing inside of me. It's
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
it wasn't anxiety, but it could be that if I, allow it to go. I had to really get me books. I had that book, that popular book, What to Expect When You're Expecting. And
Hmm.
and then I had to get a book of prayers for God to help me because it was kind of
Yeah.
like a lot. I really prayed a prayer over giving birth. I had to pray
Hmm.
over that one because it started to scare me after you start
Oh yeah,
seeing
it's scary.
and understanding how they say how dangerous it is for a woman to give birth. People don't think about that,
Hmm.
and some people just can
Yeah.
have babies like it's nothing, but that is a very critical time
It's a
for a mother
reality.
and
Yeah.
child trying to come into this world. That is major. So I had to really pray about it to get some peace for
Yeah.
me to go through that process. And so let's go back into everything's going well, even though you had all of the concerns and excitement,
Hmm.
everything all wrapped up into one. Everything didn't go according to plan. Tell me when you realized something was wrong, or did you feel that way, or just unfortunately did it just stuff just start to happen?
Um, Everything was going great. Doctor's appointments going very well. So one day, I'm getting ready to leave the house. Decided to do a little bit of housework before I decided to leave, and vacuuming the floor, and all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, oh, let me stop and go to the restroom. So I stopped. I went to the restroom, and I started leaking,
Mm.
and it was like, okay, wait a minute. This doesn't look like what it's supposed to look like.
Mhm.
So of course, being new to this, being the first time, it's like, okay, well, maybe it's just, that's just how things work.
Mhm.
But there was something inside of me saying, okay, no, I'm not sure about this. Let's go ahead and get this checked out. So I think my husband was at work. So I called him and told him what was going on. And he said, well, okay, well, let's go to the emergency room and just kind of, check out to make sure things are okay. So sat in the emergency room for a while, still thinking, no, this is probably just nothing, it's probably just normal. But, let's go ahead and go through this and get checked out. So, we go back to the room, and of course they ask you a series of questions and that kind of thing. And then they bring out the machine to do the ultrasound. So here it is. It's like, oh, okay, well, it's probably nothing. It's probably,
Mhm.
it's, and then you get the devastating news where it's like, whoa, wait a minute. So you hear, and the doctor was, I don't know if this was like he was new to
Mhm.
this.
Mhm.
So of course, the last thing you want to see or hear is your doctor kind of sigh.
Exactly.
And it was like this huge sigh, and he turned, literally, it was like he turned red, like, okay, how am I going to say this
Mhm.
to her? So, it was the whole thing of, and of course I'm looking like, what's going on? So I hear the sigh, what is, just tell me, what's going on, just tell me what it
Mhm.
is. And he says, Miss Crawford, I'm sorry. What do you mean you're sorry?
Yes.
I'm sorry. And so here it is, you get the news where your baby didn't make it. And so I'm laying there, and my mom is in the room, my husband's in the room, and we're, for this second or two, the room is silent because you're like, okay, did we just really hear
What?
what he just said?
Okay.
And he's very apologetic. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. And in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, it wasn't something that you did,
Of course.
but still hearing the news, it's like, okay, um, did he really just say?
It
So my
something
mom
I
is
wasn't
is
expecting.
yeah, you weren't expecting that. So my mom is are you sure? Is there anything that you can do? This, and I'm sorry, there's nothing we can do. The baby didn't make it. So, and at that point we did not know the gender.
Mhm.
We did not know the gender.
You
So,
yeah, far in your pregnancy were you at that moment?
I was, I think, a little over 4 months.
Okay. So you went through
So,
that first trimester because
oh yeah,
right
first
over.
trimester
Yeah.
was no problem. First trimester. So of course, you make it through the first trimester. It's like, okay, we're
You're
good
good.
to go now. Oh, we're in this. So it was, we did not, I didn't know the gender. And it was not until that day that we found out the gender.
Wow.
And my husband, my mom, we were both like, okay, I don't, what, we were all in the room just
Thank
kind of like,
God.
so I think what happened for me, and they kept talking to me, and I was quiet.
Yeah.
I did not say anything to anybody. Um, and it was, are you okay? Are you okay? Are you okay? And I just kind of had this blank stare, like, okay. So at the time I remember just having this conversation with God, is like, so what was the point?
Yeah. Yeah. That's
If you
honest,
were gonna do
honest
this, if
yeah.
this was going to, yeah, so that honest moment, that moment of honesty, that moment of transparency, say, okay, I'm not talking to y'all right now. Let me talk to him.
Yeah. Yeah.
What? So wait a minute. We're here for what reason now?
Yeah.
So it was questioning, it was looking at their faces.
Yes.
It was having to go through this process of, now we have to lay here and you have to take this baby, and you know um now they're talking to them, and as if I'm not in the room because I'm not responding.
Exactly.
So it was, you take the baby, and it was an
Did they
experience.
admit you right away, or did you were able to go home first and then come back for an
No, I had to stay. I had to stay there. They went ahead and took the baby. And the thing about it, when they took him and they put him in this bucket.
Mhm. You know.
And so you're thinking, wait a
What?
minute, my baby's in a bucket.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's the whole thing of course, sometimes people be in certain professions, they become immune
Of
to
course.
certain
Of
things,
course.
and it becomes routine for them. But you're sitting in this room, and you're just like, this really just did not happen. It could not have happened. So it was the immediate, we've got to go ahead and get this done, and which led to me having another procedure, to make sure. So
Right
you
after
know
you mean while you
right
were there?
after, yeah,
Mhm.
right after that, so It was a very traumatic experience. It really was, to be totally honest. It was a very traumatic
Let me
experience.
tell you this. I
Um,
can truly understand how you felt, especially the part where when you were at the doctor office, and at least his response sounded differently than my experience, because I had a miscarriage, I think
mhm,
before my daughter. And in
mhm,
that miscarriage, my husband and I and some friends, we were on vacation. And
mhm,
just to really fast, I don't want to go through my story, but I started spotting, so I knew something was wrong. And I went to the hospital where this city state we were in. And they said, my cervix was closed and everything still. So everything was, it looked up to appear to look okay. So I called my
mhm,
doctor the very next day, or that night, they called him. And he told me just relax and try to make the trip back home. So we broke up our trip into two parts. I didn't travel uh one way. So long story short, when we got to the hospital back in Atlanta, Georgia, I remember when they did the ultrasound on me, the lady just sat there, and she's doing the ultrasound, and then she looked, and she didn't even look at my husband and I at the time. She just said, "Oh, it's empty."
mm.
And I'm sitting here like you, in shock.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what did you just say? So it startled me. I was so upset. I cried through all filling out my paperwork and everything, because the
yeah.
emotional part of already all of it, and then the
Oh,
fact
yeah,
how she said it would seem like it was so, she had no emotion. And like you said, I think she
yeah.
was probably immune to it. But I,
Immune
I
to it.
complained
Yeah,
about it, because I'm like, you
yeah.
say every woman, I don't care if it was her third child, you just
Mhm.
don't say that to a person who's looking for that little person to come into this world.
Right,
It's
right.
you have to be more cautious how you say it. So I could
Yeah.
just still understand how you would feel like you were in a daze, because even filling out my paperwork and everything, I felt like I was in a daze, going
Yeah.
through all of the process. So I so can relate to how you were feeling, and feeling like you were, it's like almost like that out of body experience when someone is telling
Oh,
you
yeah.
certain things like that. That had to be emotional. So with all the emotions, um, I'm sure you felt overwhelmed, like you were saying. Um, if any, because after, well, I went through my concerns. Tell me, how did you deal with that after you came out of the hospital? How did you get back to normal life? Because I'm sure you were dealing with all types of emotional ups and downs, possibly. I'm not sure, but were you feeling any type of emotional uh, ups and downs at the time after you got out of the hospital and trying to get back to life differently than what you were thinking in the past 4 months?
A lot of hurt, a lot of disappointment, even having to spend a couple of days in the hospital afterwards.
Hmm.
There was a time where I blacked out,
Oh, really?
completely blacked out, so um I'm in this trance of this daze or whatever you want to call it, and I hear people calling my name, but I literally cannot respond.
Yes.
Cannot respond. So all of a sudden, I'm laying there, and then I look up, and there's a room full of doctors and nurses, and they're calling my name, and they're trying to get me to come back. And I completely went somewhere else,
Mm,
completely went somewhere else. And so after kind of coming to, it was okay. So now, what do we do?
yes.
You go home, and of course, at this time, really, um, I wasn't really prepared, I guess, for any of it. Of course not,
Mhm. Of course.
So went back home, and the family's making sure I'm okay, and I'm in this funk where it's like, what's the use? I don't care. We just, I'm over this.
Yeah.
I tried it. We tried it. We're not doing this again.
So even that first one, did your doctor not talk to you and say, yeah, sometimes, first pregnancies, I know it's very small, somewhat still,
Hmm.
but it can end in, I'll say, miscarriage. I know they term some of them differently according to the number of weeks, but did
Hmm.
did they tell you anything where it's like, do not worry, this first time? My doctor mentioned that to me. Mine was within the first trimester though. But did they say anything to you like that to comfort you in some ways, as you remember, hearing it from the
I
medical
don't
side?
remember.
Okay.
I don't rem I
You were
really
days
don't
probably in such a
remember.
days of probably, and I'm sure
Yeah,
even
I don't remember. I do, I do remember not enjoying the experience in terms of going to the doctor, the care. And it wasn't necessarily the care that I was being provided. I think it was more so the bedside manner.
yes,
It was just kind of like, so the whole experience itself was like, okay, all right, this can't be what this is supposed to be like.
exactly.
It can't be.
Mm,
It can't be. I just remember not really having that conversation, but it's kind of like, okay, well, and even listening to my mom, well, this is something that they have to tell you because, of course, the profession that they're in, they have to kind of let you know certain things.
mhm,
And I remember going back to the follow up, and I sat there in this room full of people, and I'm looking around, and it's like, so I'm not the only one who's gone through this. Okay.
mhm,
However, you feel like you're the only person,
mhm.
who has gone through this. You feel some type of way. It's of course it's disappointing. And I just sat there because I remember, I think my husband could not go to the follow appointment with me,
Mhm.
I think due to work. And I just sat there. I made it through the appointment. And, afterwards I got in the car and I just bawled. I just cried
Wow.
because it was like, what was the purpose of you bringing me through all of this? This does not feel good. And of course, you've been through things in life before that were disappointing, things that were, hurtful, things that, but something to this magnitude, it's like, okay, wait a minute, this is new.
Yes,
So because it's a new type of hurt, it's a new type of pain, it's a new kind of disappointment. You're not sure so what do I do with these feelings?
yes. Ex-
What do I do?
So let me ask you this: did you ever, at least for this experience, felt like you got an answer, or you just started
Um,
moving eventually with life again?
I think eventually we just kind of picked up the pieces and decided just to move on. So it was, of course, the depression started to set in where it's, my husband's like, are you okay? Is everything all right?
Mhm.
So it was him trying to make sure that I'm okay.
Yes.
Him not necessarily dealing with it himself, but he kept going, he kept moving, and I'm like, okay, am I the only one that went through this? Did he did
Mm.
so did you go through this with me, or you how are you good?
And he was
And
probably trying to
so I
scope
thought,
you, try to make sure you just okay. Like
yeah, trying to
it's
make sure I'm
probably not
okay,
good sometimes for the husband or the father because they experience grief as well.
Yeah. So, even with my mom, my mom was, she lives with us. So
Okay.
it was the whole thing of, are you okay? And so it was a constant, hey, are you okay? I'm just checking on you, just trying to make sure you're good. So having that support was good. Having that support was good. Having somebody who, not necessarily, I don't want to say may have gone through it themselves, but being her age and being around certain people and knowing, okay, yeah, this is life. This is how life happens sometimes. So I can comfort you in that regard.
Yes,
So that was comforting, for both of us. But it was a strain.
I can imagine. So let me just ask you this: did you say they put your baby in a bucket? I still can't fathom that part. Were you able to
Hmm.
see him, or you? Well, was it a was the gender a boy, right?
It was a boy.
And did you
It
name
was a boy. So we had already picked out the name. His name was Reginald Wesley.
Reginald?
Reginald Wesley Crawford. So we and I did not find out until everything was done. And they said, "Well, did you know?" And I was like, "No." And my husband was like, "It was a boy." And I was like, "Oh." And it went from the whole thing of, what, it didn't matter if it was a girl or a boy. It was just that, oh, okay, that was my baby. So it was that part. And just, again, looking at how to to them it was the norm. That was their normal procedure.
Yes.
But, not having that connection to, okay, this person is dealing with this for the first time. So it was, I just remember getting phone calls from, family, my pastor at the time. And, it was even the whole thing of, it took me a while before I was able to even go back to church.
Wow. Were
It took me a while.
you think it's because you were mad at God, or do you think it was just something to have to deal with the people coming at you, confronting, other people coming to you who didn't know maybe? asking, what was it you think?
It was, I didn't want to face people.
Yeah,
Sometimes it was embarrassing.
I understand.
It was embarrassing, and then it was to the point where you would see, people your age, or see people who, had babies and that kind of thing. So, you had to deal with all of that.
Yes.
So if I go out in public, I'm going to have to deal with this. And there was not the conversation of how to deal with it.
Mhm,
There was not the conversation of, hey, this is what is going to happen.
mhm.
You just kind of push back out there in life and say, okay, this happened. All right, sorry. Now go live again.
Yes. I know that's how
So, not knowing how to, that's how it is
exactly.
for
Because
some
it's
people.
something
For me,
huge.
it was.
Yes, because
Yeah.
people who, I'll say men, they don't understand your body is changing. It's so much
Yeah.
going on in your body once you're pregnant. And,
Hmm.
I wish, who all want to, I wish every woman could, I wish every woman could experience that,
Hmm.
who would want that experience. And,
Oh, yeah.
I wish they could, but it's going through so much. So your emotions can be your hormones are
All over the
all over the
place.
place. So like you
Yeah.
said, to have lost Reginald and then to now have to get back with life and say, okay, go back to work, go back to church, go back to,
Hmm.
just doing your normal daily life. It's different. It's
Yeah.
different. How long before you felt like y'all, do you have a number like it was like 3 or 4 years before you said, okay, I feel like I'm good. I feel like I've accepted that. If you got to the point you think you were ever really good, feeling good about where you were, and let's move on, and maybe one day want to try again, come to grips with wanting to try again.
Um, I think I made up my mind, even though people say, well, you guys can try again, if these are things that just happen, it's nothing that you did, that kind of thing. I think I made up my mind. I was like, no, I'm good.
Yeah. So you
I'm good.
didn't
I'm not,
want
I'm not going through
you
this.
didn't want to
I
go
don't think I want to go through this again. The remote possibility of having to go through this again. So
so you were
it was
adamant
where,
that you did not want to go through anything like that again.
yeah, I was like, no, we're good. So it's maybe this we both got to the point where, well, maybe this is not for us.
Yes. Yes.
So it was, okay, let's try to heal the best way we know how.
Hmm.
Again, not necessarily having that time to go and go to support groups and to go to, none of that took place. It was hey, let's keep praying. We're family and friends, we're praying for you, and that's kind of thing. And I remember even talking to you.
Hmm.
It's like, hey, how do you deal with this? So that was helpful. Just talking to somebody else that had gone through it. And it was interesting enough, even throughout conversations that my mom had with the rest of our family members, of course, calling, with their condolences and that kind of thing. It was interesting to find out how many of my close family members had gone through the same thing.
Wow.
And I never knew.
I never knew it because a lot of people don't talk
So
about it.
we don't talk about
We
it.
don't
Yeah,
talk
it was
about
something that was not, and I'm thinking, who who went through and how many times? So it was something that we didn't talk about,
it.
or we don't talk about.
And because you mentioned the part of it, it was embarrassing, and no one should feel that way. But that's just sometimes that's
Hmm.
just our honest opinion. That's how we felt.
Yeah.
And you like, okay, what's wrong with me, or why do
Right.
I do it? Like you said, looking at other people who look like they didn't have
Hmm.
a problem, even though we don't know for sure if they've ever had problems. Sometimes,
Right.
unless you talk to them in detail, like you did with the family eventually, but you just don't know, and you feel that way. It is a feeling that we feel, unfortunately, and we
Yeah.
shouldn't be embarrassed, but it's something you have to deal with to say, okay, it's and talk to yourself like I do everything. It's not you,
Yeah.
it's something that happened, and of course, having that conversation says your people of faith, praying and asking God, okay,
Hmm.
you know, I got hopefully you have got some understanding of this is was His plan, and it happened this way, even though we don't understand it, but still,
Right.
trying to come to grips with that. Your dad was not alive at that time, right?
No, my dad passed in 2001. So my dad passed the year before I got married.
Yes. Okay. Okay. So he didn't
So
wasn't able to even.
and I think there was a sense of guilt
Yeah.
even in that regard. It was where um he didn't get a chance to see his grandkids. All of his siblings had grandkids and he didn't.
Yes.
So even on my mom's side, all of her siblings had grandkids and she
And
didn't.
she did.
So it was the one thing where it's kind of like, well, what's wrong with your kid? You know,
Yeah.
all our kids, we good over here. What's going on with your kid over there?
Yeah. That's another,
So
that's a
it was
whole
that, it
other
was guilt.
burden to feel like put on you now. You got to make sure that your
Yeah,
mom's side and your
yeah,
father's side
yeah,
get their name, make their name live on in the children that
yeah,
you're having
yeah.
for them, for yourself, of course, for them. Of
So, you felt like, I mean, and I'm sure they didn't feel that way. My mom
course
didn't
not.
feel that way.
Of course.
But, you felt like, well, they ain't got all the grandkids. I'm the only one that's jacked up.
Yes.
So it's that part
Yeah.
where
Yes.
you have this sense of guilt. So it messes with your mind,
It messes with
and
your
then
mind.
having the profession of being a teacher, now I've got to go back around children.
Oh, yes, you are a teacher of little ones at that,
Yes.
elementary
So
school.
eh, that was a whole nother set of emotions, a
Yeah.
whole gamut and flood of emotions. It's like now I've got to go back and face these kids.
Yes.
And it's like, okay, all right, okay, God, okay, well, okay.
Yeah. It's I, don't- I use the word funny, but it's funny how the profession you're in, what has
Mm-hmm.
happened that you had to experience, and you're going back into a profession where, like you said, it's so many little ones running around, and
Mm-hmm.
all you can
Mm-hmm.
see is, oh, that could have been one of my little one
Yeah.
running
Yeah.
around. That's a lot to have to
But
that.
thankfully, at the time I was substituting. So
Yeah.
at the time I was substituting, I was had left and went into business with a friend of mine, and it's like, okay, we were still in front of kids, still teaching, but not knowing that even within that time period that my husband and I would face some very strenuous, intense financial issues.
Oh wow.
So, it was thinking about it, he and I both were saying, okay, wait a minute. Now, if we had had this baby, not to say that we
Yes.
didn't miss the child, but it's like, okay, so God, you knew what we're about to face.
Yes.
So, it was okay. When I tell you we struggled financially, it was a major struggle due to job losses,
Yes.
so and me trying to navigate this business, so all of that tied into the emotions, and the marriage took a hit. So it was a lot going on, a whole lot. But still, my mom asking me, do you trust God? Even in the midst of all of it,
She did.
she would still ask me, do you still have faith? Do you still trust God? So she would never let me get to the point where it was like, no, we're not going so far left. We're not going way over here. Stick to what you know.
Now
Stick to what you've been taught.
that is important, an important piece. I wish if everyone doesn't have it, I wish they did.
Mm-hmm.
That's why I hope
Yeah.
that this podcast and these podcasts that we are bring could help people who may not have that support system, like your mother, who is my aunt, by the way,
Right.
everyone. So to have someone who reminds you, even though you were raised in the church, to say, "Do you still have faith?" And
Yeah.
putting that back into you, and you have to put that in your mind, and just say, "Okay,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm going to be a believer of His Word, do I still have faith?" You may have to question. It's not that
Yeah.
we're not human, and we
Right.
don't want to make it seem like we still didn't question some things, but you
Yeah.
have to go back to His Word to say, "Okay," and answer that question. Answer her question. Do you still have it? Or if not, then don't go to him asking him for things that you don't trust him for. So
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
that was awesome to have that. And also the fact where you said you and your husband went through the part where you said all the things that you were going through financially and with the business, trying to start a business, which is a big deal. Okay, God, you know what's best. And
Mm-hmm.
even saying some of
Mm-hmm.
those things, it doesn't ease the pain of how you when you lost him, but it helps maybe in our own way of understanding some things. Say, okay, God,
Right.
you know what you're doing. So, and then you start moving on in life. We're gonna jump ahead a few years now, and you're moving on with life, and then here we come into 2015, the year of 2015.
Mm-hmm.
You find out what was our big news in 2015.
2015. Um, feeling a little weird again.
Mhm.
and going to the doctor and hearing again, hey, you're pregnant. What?
You're not that one
So,
having a pregnancy test around the house, just trying just to see. You going to
no, I used to when we first got married, those years that we thought, okay, well, and I think I did it out of, because that was you were supposed to do, out of expectation, that's what you're supposed to do. But, here it is, 2015, and it's like, okay, what? Because it was out of my mind. Okay,
yes.
we're good. Obviously this is not going to happen. We had settled, let's kind of get some things together so we can go ahead and adopt. We're good, no problem. But here it is, you hear again, and it's interesting because every time that I was pregnant, my husband was the one who told me. I didn't know.
Your
He told me.
husband knew first. I mean, well, not
He
first.
knew
He knew
first.
something was different.
He
Wonderful.
knew. He knew.
That's a
He knew something
connection.
was different. And by this time I had changed doctors. So, it was that part where it's like, okay, well, all right then. So, okay, let's try it again.
Mhm.
So here I am, I think now 43.
Okay.
So you're talking about a couple of years,
Mhm.
Um, so it's like, okay. So of course, the first thing that pops into your mind is, here we go
Yeah.
again. All right. So, of course, you're thinking, okay, this time it has got to work. This time, okay, God, I understand. You were testing us the first time. We had to learn some lessons the first time. And yes, we got it. And yes, you brought us through. So it was that, okay, oh no, for sure. Yeah, this time.
Your faith
This
was up
time.
there. Yeah, you
We're good. We're good. So, but then in the back of my mind, of course, it was the nervousness. It was still the what ifs. But what if? But what
age
if?
as well. The
So,
age for you as
yeah,
well, like the first time.
yeah,
Hmm.
age, and for me also age, and being honest, it was the age and it was the weight. So it was a lot of factors
Yeah.
where it's kind of like, all right, here we go.
Hmm.
Okay, we'll try it again.
Hmm. So you going through that part, the excitement again, of course, and
Hmm.
some concerns, of course, like you said already. So here we move to July 3rd,
Hmm.
the day of July 3rd. Let's kind of recap that day when you woke up, and because everybody, the world is preparing for July 4th. Everyone knows is you know
Hmm.
the big celebration for America. But the day before July 3rd, what were you all? What were you doing, or where was your mind? Everything is going well to pregnancy. How far at the time were you at that point in before July 3rd?
I was about 20 weeks along.
20 weeks.
And so,
Five
made it out of the first trimester again.
months pregnant.
Um, and then it was where, I had a couple of days before, I had just had lunch with a friend, and on the way home, thinking, oh well, we're good, okay, we're good.
So that July
Just
2nd,
had lunch,
you were having lunch with a friend, like the day
had lunch with
before.
a friend a couple of days before.
Mhm.
And on the way home, had this big sneeze or whatever, and I felt something, and it was like, okay, that's new, that's weird.
Mhm.
So I got home, and lo and behold, in my mind, I'm thinking, God, no, 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 no. We're not doing this again. So I get home, and thankfully my mom is there. So I get home, I go to the bathroom, and there's blood everywhere.
Mm.
So I'm panicking, and she's like, oh my gosh, okay, let's. So she drives me to the hospital,
Mhm.
and we go to the emergency room, and they're kind of like, okay, we're not really equipped to do that here, so let's get you to the main hospital. So by ambulance, I'm traveling to the main hospital, and I get there, and my doctor's like, what in the world? I just saw you yesterday.
Yes.
Why are you here?
Yes.
Why are you here? So it was the whole thing. I don't know. You tell me what's going on.
I
So
don't want to
she's
be
shocked
here.
as well.
Yeah.
Right. I don't want to be here. So she's shocked as well. Like, wait a minute. Yesterday, everything was
They
fine. So
just checked you the
literally,
day before.
just checked me. And this is a couple of days before July 3rd. So she had just checked me, and it was like, okay, let's figure out what's going on. So we went and did some tests, and went and did the ultrasound and everything, and found out that my cervix had opened up
Oh,
completely.
wow. Again, you're 5 months pregnant, your cervix opened up. And to recap, you sneezed, you felt something seem like a pop.
Mm-hmm.
and blood everywhere. You're at the doctor's office, and they say your cervix opened up.
Mm-hmm.
What happened after that?
So I'm in an emergency room, and of course, we're looking at each other like, okay, what happened? And so normally she explained that, if it were a case where if something was there, I would be able to be stitched up and,
Okay.
and preserve the pregnancy.
Hmm.
But lo and behold, the baby was still there.
Wonderful.
Baby was still in place, baby still intact. So, I had to be admitted, of course, and they wanted to do everything that they could to try to, preserve the pregnancy.
Yes.
So I had to end up being in a room, being tilted,
Healthy.
being in a tilted position where my head was on the bed was actually tilted, where
Wow.
I had to kind of, yeah. So they were trying to keep him from coming.
Mm.
And so we're talking about a couple of days in this position where it's like, okay, this is very interesting.
I can
So, I'm thinking, wait a minute, you mean here we go again? Again?
once again, I want to reiterate again. It, sometimes pregnancy doesn't take the typical route that we all
Yeah,
expect.
it does
Love
not.
and
It
marriage, and
does
then here
not.
comes the baby when you're ready.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
now you're tilted in a bed, other
yeah,
side, like slanted, trying to
yeah,
preserve, getting baby Crawford to stay
yeah,
longer because you're only 5 months
yeah.
pregnant.
Yeah.
Wow, that's extra that a lot of people don't have to
So,
experience. So how long were you in that position, and what was their next steps? What they thinking they should do at that point besides that?
well, there was nothing else they could do. So I was in that position for a couple of days. Of course, had people praying and, people coming by my bedside. I remember sleeping and I might be waking up. I'm kind of groggy,
Yeah,
but all I hear is people praying, people reading scripture, people trying to encourage me, oh, it's going to be fine. We're going to be all right. Everything's going to be fine. Just hang in there.
yes.
And, July 3rd comes.
Mhm.
And so the doctor's like, as long as he can stay in this position, as long as he doesn't do a lot of moving, then we're good. We can kind of hang in there. Let's try to hang in for the next 2 weeks. Are you serious?
Yes.
You want me to stay? But whatever it takes, hey, let's do it.
Because that couldn't
I
have
just
been comfortable.
oh, it was not. It was not comfortable. But I'm laying there and I'm like, okay, God, whatever it takes. Let's do this.
I know men go through
Yeah.
things, y'all, and I am not here to say discount what men go through because they have
Right.
own what they go through. But once
Right.
again, the things we go through,
Yeah.
it,
Yeah.
yeah, that's all I'm gonna do is take a deep sigh. The things we go.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
why we should be treated like queens, ladies. And you take
Exactly.
your seat and you put that crown on and don't you dare take it off. But
Break it off.
please
Yeah.
go ahead. It was very uncomfortable. They wanted you to stay there for 2 weeks, at least
Yeah.
additional weeks to try. You're trying to get to 6 month period.
Trying to at least get to for him to be 22 weeks. So,
Okay.
if it were 22 weeks and then developmentally, it would have been a little bit, even though, he would have had to go to the NICU and that kind of thing, it would still, um, it would have been it would have been better
Yes.
if we had gotten to that point. So,
Yes.
here it is. It's about 1 o'clock in the afternoon,
Mhm.
and the doctor's like, there's nothing else we can do. He's coming. He's on the way.
Wow.
And so my husband's at work.
Mm.
So I'm calling him. He's trying to get there, trying his best to get there. And lo and behold, Ryan did not want to wait. So he
Oh,
came and my husband was not there.
two things. Okay.
Yeah.
You named him. Of course, it's a little boy. His name is Ryan.
Yeah.
And
Mm-hmm.
while your husband couldn't make it at that time, he
Mm-hmm.
wasn't able to be there.
Mm-hmm.
In Atlanta traffic, I can't imagine, and trying to
Right.
leave
Right.
work. Oh, and Ryan just said, I'm not waiting.
I'm not waiting.
So, of
So
course, thankfully, your mother was there. So you had
my
that
mom was
support
there.
system, which is major for
Mm-hmm.
you. Was it a normal pregnancy? Did they have to do a C-section, or was it?
No, it was a
No,
normal vaginal birth, so he came out and, he was moving and kicking. And I mean, I just remember seeing this kid, his fist were fighting.
Really?
And he came out fighting.
He
He
came
came out fighting, legs moving, I mean, fighting. And so of course they put him over in the bed and off to the side, and they're doing whatever they need to do to him and whatever they need to do to me. And I mean, his he was fighting. His eyes were still sealed, lips were still sealed, but he was fighting. And that's one thing I remember. He was a fighter.
Wow, that's a blessing. So everyone just remember this. Ryan came out fighting, of course,
Mm-hmm.
alive. He had, like you said, his eyes were still sealed because he wasn't fully
Sealed.
in
Mm-hmm.
that part developed as you
Right.
say. So when he came, what could you hear what the doctors were saying? Were you asking questions to say how's Ryan? Were you just trying to deal with, the doctors were still taking care of you as well? They left Ryan there, or did they take him away, as you know of? Because I know you're
They left him. They left him in the room,
at the moment. Okay.
because they knew that there was nothing else to do.
Yes.
So of course my mom was asking questions. Is there a possibility that you guys could,
What's next?
what are we looking at now?
Yeah.
What's next? Right? What's next? What's happening? And so the doctors explaining to her, had he been a little bit, a little bit more, in about a week, or even a week or two, a week, 2 weeks, yes, but in about a week, maybe there was a possibility. So she's over there, she's looking at him, and I'm looking at him, and again, of course, I'm thinking, are you for real? Are you serious?
So they were already letting you
So
know that still, even though we know with God all things are possible, but they felt like
yeah,
there wasn't nothing more like they could put him in. I don't know the terms, and in something
yeah,
else, so he can kind of grow a little bit more like he is in the womb
yeah.
still. There wasn't nothing they were expecting. They had no expectations of him surviving, is what you're saying?
They had no expectations of him surviving because of the stage where he was. Developmentally he would, still would not have met, uh, I guess, a time frame that they needed to help him continue to
Exactly.
develop.
Okay. Okay.
But just to watch him fight and watch him fight. So I think the most devastating part was to watch this child pass away. So, to be in the room, to know that eventually this child is going to, his spirit is going to leave his body.
The-
And
I don't want to rush past what you just said. That is that's huge.
that's
Just
huge.
like you said, your baby is in your room, but
Mm-hmm.
just I can't say it better than what you just said.
Mm-hmm.
And you can't rush past this because people listening to this, again, she's telling the story now of her second child, their second child,
Yeah.
husband. And it takes my breath away because you already went through a lot. You clearly articulated how much asking God, oh really God, the first one. Now
Mm-hmm.
you're here with a
Mm-hmm.
baby who your baby came and he survived, you know, coming out fighting, and
Mm-hmm.
now you have to sit there and watch him.
Mm-hmm.
His spirit, it leaves him, like you're
Yeah.
saying. That's deep.
So I mean, you're laying in this room, of course, not being able to get up and that kind of thing. My mom would not leave his side.
Oh,
She would not leave his side. And of course, my husband was able to, he finally got there,
mhm.
and it was just devastating. It was devastating. It was, I think my god brother came up, and it was just, so just watching him slowly, the fight left. The fight left. And
Yeah, I was about to say the same. Everybody again, family members,
yeah,
because I
yeah,
remember getting a
the
call
fight,
that day.
so it was, of course she did not leave his side. And just watching him, and she held him.
Oh,
She held him. My mother held him until he passed. She held him. My husband was, I mean, I just remember him dropping to the floor, and he didn't want me to see him, but he fell to the floor outside the room, and it was just crushing. It was
so
crushing.
when that happened, was your god brother, and just so people know, he a man of faith himself. Did your
Yeah.
someone there with him at the time? Your god brother was there with your husband at the time?
When I as far as I can remember, he was there. It was all he remembers is, trying to catch him.
Yes.
Like, okay, and so just having those people in your life,
Yes.
to say, hey, yeah, we're hurting with
With
you,
you. Because we were believing
so
with you. That's I don't
hmm
feel that maybe that exact pain you feel, but we're
yeah,
hurting with
yeah.
you because we wanted this so bad for you.
We wanted this so bad. And we knew it, everybody's, oh no, we know this time.
This
Oh no, no,
time.
no, this time
Yes.
happened.
This
Yeah.
time.
So,
And I want people, let me just say, I
holding
want people to
him.
understand again, we're not touching on what we feel like her husband has gone through with both losses, but we know it's important, but we're dealing with just what the women go through at this point. So we're just not touching
Hmm.
on, all the things that he might have gone through
Right.
with this loss, because that's major. That's a father now has lost two sons,
Two sons. Hmm.
two sons. So go back to that day, and like you say, we're all believing. I remember I got a call, and I came to the hospital, and
Hmm.
when I got there later, of course Ryan, had already passed. And when my daughter and I walked in the room, we wasn't expecting Ryan to still be in there.
Yeah.
But when we walked in, and my aunt, your mother, walked us, the bat the where they, I'm gonna call it the bassinet, where they had him,
Hmm.
was he was still in there wrapped up. And my
Hmm.
aunt took me over to him. I was scared to go
Yeah.
because it
Yeah.
was a that's huge to me. This
That's
is our
huge.
baby. This is
Yeah.
your baby, my little cousin, and
Hmm.
he's no longer with us.
Hmm.
In on this side, and I can't imagine again how you and your husband and even that grandmother who did not leave his
Hmm.
side, who was there, but
Did not.
held him to the end, how that it had to be emotional
Yeah.
for all of us.
It was very emotional. I remember even Robert holding him, like, just the way he looked at him. It was like, this is. So, of course, it's devastating. It's like, wait a minute, and then it was the whole piece where I'm in this hospital bed, and this child is in the room. So it's like, he's just in the room with us. I remember holding him. I remember, looking at him. I remember my husband even took pictures,
Yeah,
and we did this collage of him. It's like, okay, we're not going to forget this moment.
of course.
As painful as it is.
Yeah.
So, it was where you mattered.
Of course.
You were part of us. So it was, she held him as if he was a live
Life
kicking
as
baby.
well. Yes.
So we ended
Which
up,
he was for, as maybe not the way we would
yeah,
have wanted it to be,
right, right.
but he was. So
He was there, he was alive. So just watching him pass away, and we sat there and we stayed to the hospital and waited until my husband had a friend who or knew of someone,
mhm.
and we called the funeral home,
Oh yes,
you
that's
know.
the other part. You still have to
Yeah,
plan.
yeah.
Did they give you an option? Do hospitals give an option to do it different ways? I can't imagine no parent not doing it the way you're doing it, but do they give you other options of some people who may not be able to handle it as you know or can remember?
I don't know.
Oh,
I don't know because it was he would have had and took care of it.
okay.
So it was it was almost as if he was saying, let me do this.
Yes.
Let me do this. So it was we left the hospital, and they came to get him, and we had him cremated.
Oh, you do.
We had him cremated.
Uh-huh.
So, his ashes are in the living room,
Okay.
so we had this this memorial service, close family and friends,
Mhm.
and it was I think I'd become numb,
I can only imagine.
just completely numb. By this point it was I don't, feel
But yeah,
what 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 am I supposed to feel? I didn't Where do I start?
yes, exactly.
So, it was
Once
that. It
again,
was
it's like almost going back, okay. And you really got to see this one, hold this one.
yeah, yeah.
And did you go back and that question to God? It's like, okay, really? Now you took me a
I
step
did.
further
I
and still
did.
took
I
me?
did. I did. So, even in the midst of now, I'm up preaching to people,
Oh,
you know,
yeah,
I'm up ministering to people, it's I'm in the thick of the ministry where, conducting Bible study and I'm doing this and doing that. And, here it is. Once again, your life is on public display
yeah,
where it's like, oh, okay, is something really going on with
yes.
you?
You have to
So
you trying to encourage other people and to believe in God.
right. Yeah,
You sitting here like, really, God, still?
yeah, yeah. And lo and behold, later that month, I had to return to work.
Yeah,
So, it was even that piece where it's like, oh, here we go again. Okay. So it was very devastating, even the emotional piece,
yeah,
just in the middle of the night, it's I'm crying and he doesn't know what to do or know what to say. And so sometimes he would go to my mom, okay, I don't know what to do. So it's the
understandable.
whole again, it became he was so focused on me.
Yes,
Everybody was focused on me. So that was the hard part in itself.
yes,
Um, looking at this man and we're both looking at each other like, what's really going on?
yeah,
What are we supposed to be like? Is there something? And I remember asking, it's like, okay, is there something that we did?
yeah, exactly.
It is,
Of course.
what
Yeah, start trying
did
to
we say
reevaluate
something?
everything. It's like, okay, am
Yeah,
I being punished? Or
yeah,
we
right.
all
And
ask
that
these
you felt
questions.
that way.
Yeah,
You felt that way. It was like, okay, did I say something to somebody that was out the way? So you start thinking and looking at and reflecting on life, like, okay, okay, is there something did we kill somebody? Didn't know? I mean, you don't know
you
what's
don't know. You
going on.
just feel just like you in a daze, like you said, and wondering, trying to figure it out yourself. That's
Yeah,
I
yeah.
read this article where this one woman said she felt like her body had betrayed her. Worse than that, it had betrayed
Mm,
her babies. And
mm,
when I read that, I'm like, that made so much sense to me.
mm-hmm,
You feel like
mm-hmm.
your body, especially with everybody looking at you, I'm sure, and
Yeah.
you know, and almost feeling that way. I'll ask, did you ever look at your husband to, in some ways that he feel like he's looking at you like, what's wrong, or you looking at him, or have y'all ever, felt like y'all did that, where you wanted to say, okay, is he looking at me like something's wrong with me? You know,
I mean, we did.
you did
We
experience that?
did go through that. It was even if he never said it,
Yes,
it was me verbalizing it for him,
yes,
to say, okay, well, even um being upset with myself,
yes.
in terms of the weight issue, it was like, okay, is this the reason why, it's so you're upset, you're
Yes.
disappointed, you're like you just don't know what to
You
think.
just don't know.
So this time around, because it was so different, you actually have this baby who was alive and
Mhm.
lived for 2 hours. And now it's okay, God, this is a whole another level.
Of course. Okay,
This is a whole nother level.
exactly. Okay, you're a pastor. You were preaching and doing Bible study, like you said. Did you
Hmm.
still seek therapy? Because people think, still that God didn't put therapists there for reasons,
Hmm.
and only, just going to church is going to do it. But did you
Right.
therapy at that point, since this being your second time? It felt like you need
My husband, we talked about it, and he said, okay, this is something that neither one of us is equipped to handle.
Yes.
And we had to come to that realization
Yeah.
to say, okay, we can't. I had to come to the realization, after going to my doctor's appointment,
Hmm.
of the follow up, having them ask you certain questions. And I had to come to the realization. I realized, okay, I can't handle this. I'm not handling this very well.
Exactly. Exactly.
So, if I'm going to get past this, or not past it, but if I'm going to heal,
Mm-hmm.
if I'm going to heal properly, then I need to go take a next step.
Yeah.
So I went to grief counseling.
Wonderful.
I went to grief counseling, and it was interesting how that came about. I went to grief counseling, but the thing is, the part that kind of bothered me initially was the place that I had to go to grief counseling was the same place where, my baby passed away.
Oh,
So it's every time I went, there was the memory of what happened.
yes. Wonderful.
Even though it wasn't in the same building, it was
Mhm.
still on the same campus, and you're still looking at this building. Every time you're going to talk about what happened,
Uh-huh.
you have to look in the building where it happened.
Exactly. That-
So it was 6 weeks of grief counseling, and it was interesting. Normally the counselor, the first session, it was like, okay, we'll kind of wait to see if anybody else comes.
yes.
Nobody came the first session. It was only the two of us. And so the second session, he said, well, we close after the second session.
Hmm.
So, okay, I'm the only one there the second session, two of us again.
Uh-huh.
And he says to me, he says, Legena, this has never happened.
Yes.
It's never happened where there's only one person or one participant
Yeah.
during these sessions. So, after the second session, it was closed. And for the remainder of that time, it was the two of us.
That was great. Just
I
like
knew it was for me.
it was just for you. It was meant to be.
It was for me.
Yes, you were in the
I
right
knew
place.
it was for me.
Yes.
And I started, even trying to get my husband to come because of his work schedule, he was not able to make any of the sessions.
That was meant for you. You needed
It was
that
meant for
just for
me.
yourself.
It was meant for me. And so many things came out other than, the loss of Ryan, the passing of Ryan. So many other things started to come out
Oh, wonderful.
that I had not dealt with.
Hmm. Okay. So it was like it's almost like a total cleansing with
Oh, it
not only dealing with that grief, it was just dealing with a lot
Yeah.
of other things that we all can stand to have conversations
Oh, yeah.
about once we talk to someone. So that was a good
It
thing.
was.
That was good. And
It was.
and it makes you wonder, is like God is saying, okay, yeah, let's just look at all of this right now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's what it was. But it was not until that point where I had come to the realization that, okay, there's some things that you need to deal with. So, God it was his way of saying, hey, you've been kind of going along this ride of life,
Yes.
just kind of, okay, let me suck it up and keep it
You
moving.
just keep it moving.
But not realizing that sweeping stuff under the rug, I started tripping over my own stuff.
Ooh. Wow.
So,
That
the
word.
pile had gotten
Yes.
high.
Uh-huh.
The pile had gotten so high,
Yeah.
I kept sweeping up on the rug. So, okay. So now you're trying to still walk in that same path.
Yes.
And so now your pile is so high until you're tripping over it and you don't even know. So let me let you trip and fall this time
Wow.
so that you can, come up. Okay, now you're wounded again. So now let's deal with the wound.
That is
So
profound.
it was, it was funny because even in one of the sessions, we were in with prayer.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the sessions, he had me to pray. And I'm thinking, wait a minute.
For help.
I'm like, wait a minute. But and he said something to me, we were going over just all of the deaths that had taken place in my life.
Mm-hmm.
And having not dealt with those things. And he said to me one time, he said, Legena, you've been through a lot.
Yeah.
And it was not until that point where I stopped and I said, hey, you know what?
Right.
I have.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes, you had never thought
So
about it. A lot of times we move and we just don't sit and think about
we just keep
and
going.
deal with all the things and acknowledge it, process it, so we can move forward from it. We don't.
And that's what it was. It was God's way of saying, pause. I need you to pause.
Yes.
Let's pause. I'm not saying no.
Yes.
I'm saying pause.
Yes. Wow.
And sometimes that's what God says to us. We think it's not going to happen. And he's saying, no, you're so used to play.
Yes.
Until right now, I'm going to press the pause button for you.
Hey, Path listeners, we are going to end part 1 of 2 here with God pressing the pause button for Legena as she continues therapy and trying to navigate back to a normal but very busy life after the devastating loss of her second child. The second and final episode will be released on April 22nd. If you know of anyone who has experienced a similar issue, or it seems to be taking a long time to conceive, or maybe they're wondering if it will ever happen, please share this podcast. They will find encouragement along their journey, and be inspired not to give up. Sometimes delay does not mean denial. God does not move on our timing. And if you haven't done so already, click the subscribe button so you can learn what happened next on this bold sister's path. Find out what happened after God pressed play and how Legena's story unfolds after therapy, encouraging others in ministry, and going back to work teaching kids with the constant reminder. In the meantime, don't wait to connect with Legena, who is the pastor of PowerPoint Christian Ministries. She's a speaker and author of a book entitled Face Value that we will talk about more in part 2. To purchase her book, you can do so on Amazon or any one of her 2 websites, www.P2experience.com or www.lscministries633.com. You can find all the details there or on her social media platforms that I will list in the show notes. Until next time, everyone.